How we doing, guys? Time to finally go get that ball in the air, huh? First, it's great to see our social media darling, not you, Marty, Aaron Blackwell Kardashian back there, since his video has gone viral. But no, it's exciting to go. You know, it's probably even more exciting this year when you think of, I was talking to our staff this morning about, even though it's kind of scary, but guys touching the football. You know, you think about a punter that we haven't had before, coming off a punter like we had with Corey Borquez. Well, we've got a guy, Tyson Dyer, we're really excited about, but there's a new punter. There's going to be a new kicker, right? Field goal kicker, kickoff guy. We graduated Jason Sanders. But it's exciting to just get out there and see that part of the game just right there. And then you go to the second thing, you know, a new offensive coordinator. We've tweaked our offense a little bit, and I use the word tweak because, you know, we're not going to lose our identity. You know, we're going to have the ability to run triple option when the opportunity arises. We've got a new offensive coordinator. You know, our players are excited. It brings some new energy. And with that comes new guys or guys that have been here really for the first time having the opportunity to throw the ball more. And that's exciting for coaches and for everybody to go out there and watch. We've got a quarterback that's not been here before, Sharon Jones, that we're all anxious to see. He's been here all summer, but we really, as you know, the rules are in the summer, you can do workouts, but you can't have a football out there. So we're waiting to see that. And then the receivers. You know, we've got some guys that we're really excited about. The way Jay Griffin finished the season last year. Certainly we moved Elijah Lilly from offense to receiver. You know, Emmanuel Harris is back and healthy, which last year at this time was a key component to our football team that was taken away, and his season was taken away because of injury, but now it's a blessing, you know, that he's back and he's full speed. You know, defensively we've got a lot of continuity, but it's an exciting time because the guys touching the football, whether it's kicking game, whether it's throwing the ball, it's going to be fun to see. So we're anxious to get going. You guys know how this works. You know, there's a 5-day what they call acclimation period. We'll go 2 days in just helmets, Friday and Saturday. And then you go 2 days in shells, which is shoulder pads and helmets. That's 4 of the acclimatization days. And then the 5th day is in pads. During that 5-day period, you can only practice once a day now anyhow. During that 5-day period, you can have a walkthrough at night without footballs. Again, it's a kind of a quirky NCAA rule. After the first 5 days of the acclimatization period, which is the acclimatization period, then you can have a full walkthrough with footballs, which in some ways would be like your second practice. You know, what's interesting, this camp, I think, is, you know, the quarterback's going to get a lot of attention in this camp, as it should, because I really do feel we have 3 of them that have a legitimate opportunity to start for our football team. How do we determine who it is? You know, it has to be performance-based. And how do you determine performance if you're not tackling the quarterback, right? I've not done much of that over my entire coaching career. That's something we are thinking about during our scrimmages, at least in certain situations, because, you know, we have to find out who the quarterback is, and there's a lot of competition there, and that adds another element to it, which a lot of times, as in coaching, is one of the most difficult things, and you feel the most responsibility for, is how much do you tackle, how much live contact do you do. Obviously, there's a trade-off to everything. I think we're in a good situation. I really do. Of course, talk is so cheap. I mean, talk means nothing right now. But, you know, I've said this before, but the expectations on the outside obviously aren't very high. But I can't say that the expectations have maybe ever been higher. You know, I think back to a year ago, again, back-to-back seasons, 109 years of football, 119. What? 119. We had back-to-back seasons, the most wins in school history here in 15-16, 1 year ago. But the expectations right now are every bit as high, if not higher, than they were a year ago. So I think that's a good combination, which doesn't mean anything, but I feel good about that. So we're anxious to go. We start players report tomorrow. I do feel good also that this year is different than last in that the players had a chance when summer school ended last Friday, that they at least had a chance to get a breath. And some went home, most stayed, but there was a downtime between summer school and the first day of practice. Last year we started practice, I think in July, the end of July. There was no break at all. So these players had a chance just to kind of re-energize, because the summers here, just like other places, it's a full-on grind. These kids finished school May 10th, most of them. They were all back here June 4th for the start of summer school, and they've basically been here all summer. One thing I'm really excited about, and you know, last year we had our worst season. We also had our worst GPA as a team. And I could come up with different reasons and different excuses why that happened. But the reality is that we had our worst GPA. We rebounded this spring and had our best GPA and the second best in the history of this school this past spring. And things like that are a great indicator to me of again, what we have to do, and that's raise this bar. We've had a good summer. One injury, Contrell Moran, a young running back from St. Louis. He's going to have arthroscopic knee surgery tomorrow. We don't know. It could be a slight meniscus. But other than that, you know, we're pretty healthy and pretty anxious to get going. Now, the biggest question, how are we going to determine who gets the first question now? You know, Rick was kind of a no-brainer, you know, seniority, all the above. I may just hold out on this till I see who's here the most. Or if you want to send me your birth certificates or your date of first employment. Jared, you're not even in the ballpark, I can tell right now. If Van was here, Van may be in the ballpark. But who was?
I think Van was my intern.
Okay, so Mark is in the running here. Now, Mark has to be here every time, though, to get, you know, how that works. So, Steve, I guess we'll just start since you're replacing Rick, right? So you can have the first shot.
When you saw the video of Blackwell, what was your first reaction?
I'm glad he got up out of that squat. No, it was it's Aaron Blackwell. You know, it wasn't anything that would be staged for anything. You know, that's what our team is, and the way our off season goes with the kind of togetherness and urgency. It was what it is. It was what it is, and what he is. So it was neat. It was neat to see, and again, he's kind of part of the Kardashian crew now that he's gone so viral.
Does he live up to the nickname? What is it? Absurd Hero?
That's a new one. I think we're probably going to put an end to this right now. You know, you've gotten all the mileage you're getting out of that video right now, Blackwell, right? Can we move on now? I mean, you've been extremely low maintenance, easy to coach, under the radar guy, right? You're not a prima donna now. I'm really worried about your dad, because I know your dad well enough. He may be like a celebrity in Phoenix now because of this. Yeah. No, it's neat. You know, I think there's been several of them that have kind of got out there, and we've got a great strength coach. And Armand Satchel, he played at the University of Texas, and you know, we've had a good summer. But again, you're going to go all across this country on these kickoff press conferences. They're not going to coach say they had a bad summer. So we all know kind of what it is.
So you talked about expectations. Are they even higher though with everything that's been going on with the athletic program? And you know, you guys are kicking off football season here soon. So does that make it even higher for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if it makes the expectations higher, but certainly you know, it's always been personal, right? That's what this profession is. That's what competing in athletics is. It's personal. It's probably one notch above that now, quite honestly. And you feel a responsibility. You know, momentum is such a tricky thing, right? The 12-man in football, the 6-man in basketball. A year ago, I honestly believe we had as much momentum at any time in the history of this program. I would believe that just talking to people. And we lost that momentum. And we lost momentum as an athletic department, right? So now it's time to get that momentum back, and so that's where we are. So yeah, I don't, you know, it's a feeling of responsibility.
Preseason expectations are what they are around here, but what's the one thing that changed that you think people start aware of that's going to have the biggest impact on this team?
I think pride. You know how much pride and what a strong foundation there is in this program. You know, I think so many times, particularly when there's some controversy, some negativity, sometimes you see things through a different lens that isn't always accurate. And we've been pretty consistent with the lens in which we've seen things through. You know, I heard a great line that said, you know, the quality of your marriage depends on the last conversation or the last controversy you had with your wife, right? We all get it. You know, I've been married 40 years. It could have gone great all week, and you're looking forward to a great weekend. But there's some controversy or some conversation that has at Friday night that just screws up that whole weekend. Well, it's really the same thing in coaching, right? It's the same thing in athletics. You know, as much momentum as we had last year, you're judged on what happened last season and happened the last game. But through that, if you have a strong foundation, as I said, I've been married 40 years, and we've had our share of arguments, we get through it pretty quick. And I think you can say the same thing about this program if you've looked through it the lens that I've looked through. And that is, we can rebound from 1-3-9 season because we have a strong foundation. And I think it's even more important when you're in a leadership position to be able to be consistent on that lens you're looking through. So with that said, I feel pretty good right now because I know what we have done here and how we've done it. And so, you know, we've got a chance to bounce back. We need to go do it.
On the lens thing, coming out of media day in Vegas, I felt that the majority of media and coaches I talked to looked at it through the lens of the 2 previous years, not necessarily coming off of the 3 tonight. Did you get a good feeling when we talked to the media from around the league? Did you get the feeling that this program still has that respect, and are your players still looking at it through that lens?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Jeff. I think it is important, and I think that's why it's important for the players to go to Las Vegas. And I actually had that conversation with Aaron Jenkins and Alex Hart in Vegas right before we left, and I talked about, isn't it amazing how what the perception is outside is so different sometimes than what the perception is inside. And honestly, I think back to my days in South Bend and that fishbowl and that swirling kind of thing. And I had a great athletic director that used to always talk about that. You know, there's a whole world out there outside of South Bend that has their perception of what Notre Dame football is and what the issues are. But I think that's a great point. I mean, you felt it too. We're judged more on the outside by the foundation that we have set and what we've done big picture. Where internally, it's on, just like with my wife, what was that last conversation we had? And it's all fair, I get it. But that's why I feel pretty good, and I feel like we have a legitimate opportunity to bounce back and have a good football team. Because it's so important to identify and separate perception and reality. And the more controversial things get, or the more emotional things get, the harder it is to do that. And it's important that that's what the leader does, and that's how you lead your football team on what's fact and what's fiction. So I do think we're in a good position right now. On the outside, it may appear a little bit negative. Well, it hasn't been one bit negative around here every day on the inside. So, again, when we kick that ball off out there on September 1st, probably none of this conversation is going to matter, but I like where we are right now. I like the position we're in. You know, a year ago, the expectations were really high. I went back and looked. I mean, we were picked by USA Today 50th ahead of Ole Miss, Michigan State, Missouri. I went back and looked at that. We weren't that good. And we're not as bad as where we're predicted right now either. So that's a great question.
Coach, you're on Fred and I radio show a couple months ago, and we talked about something very critical. You mentioned 27 turnovers. That really killed you last year. And what we have to do this year is put those numbers down and start become a takeaway machine. And I was looking at some Brian Urlacher film the other day, especially his last game he ever played against the Air Force. I think he created 3 takeaways. First guy hit, the guy stripped. So my question is, this is such a critical, the margin of victory for us is so small. We have to be able, what are you going to do during the camp? Be able to create turnovers and cut the turnover ratio down.
We got some of that Brian Urlacher genes in that Gatorade bottle out there. You know, we're going to get that going. Now, you know, that is the key. You know, we went for 5 seasons here, averaging right at 13 turnovers per season for 5 years, which put us in the top 10 in the country of fewest number of turnovers. Over a 5-year period, we were top 10, fewest number of turnovers with 13. We turned it over 29 times last year. So again, that's where it's important to determine what's really important and what really matters, and how do we go from 3 and 9 to get it back. I talked about GPA. That's up there ahead of the turnover thing for me. Turnovers would probably be second. Turnovers would probably be second on this team. The bottom line, we went 3 and 9 because we turned the ball over 29 times last year. Over twice as many as we did for 5 previous seasons per year. And we didn't have many takeaways. Now, there's a lot of ways to talk about turnovers, a lot of ways. You need some good fortune. You need some good players. You can't get behind in games where you have to throw it if you're not really comfortable throwing it. You know, a lot of turnovers come when you get rattled and you're behind in games. There's a lot of things that go into that, but certainly the turnovers is, bottom line, the most important topic for this team going into this.
Bob, you talked about the expectations last year compared to this year. How does that change your coaching as far as just the motivation that you bring out to practice with these guys? Was there some overconfidence maybe last year, and then do you use something else to get them fired up with?
No, I don't think so. You know, this is, as I said, I mean, it's always full on. You know, full on for coaches and full on for players. You know, there's no, well, we were picked higher and we maybe this, or we weren't as motivated. I do go back to that GPA and those turnovers and things like that is what reality is, and caused us to take a step back. But no, I mean, you attack this the same way. You attack this the same way. But the human element of, you know, we haven't done a lot of talking. We've taken a lot of shots around here. That's reality. Nobody can argue that. I think our players have handled it really well. I think they've handled things really well. And, you know, the pride element of it. You know, Mark, I go back to that, what I said. I think I was asked, what's the one thing? It's pride. You know, it took a lot of work to build this thing up to where it was. It took a lot of things. And you just don't want to let it slip away. So, pride.
Do you feel a little of that circling of the wagons with the guys?
You know, I think in a positive way. You know, I've never been one to play the, you know, the chip on the shoulder card, if there is such a thing. I just think in a positive way, you know. One thing we found out, you know, we jumped out 3-2 last year. I think after we won the first game, we had won 8 of our last 9 games. We were 3-2. We didn't win another game. It's a heck of a lot of difference between winning and losing and what it feels like. And that was evidenced last year. And I think I think just that in itself, just that in itself.
You talk about
is there from the players' perspective, as they get back to school, people start coming in, they've been here all summer, they've been listening. What's the thought process for the players, and what's the message to the players as far as how to handle all the outside noise and negativity, whatever it is pertaining just to football and football?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. You know, you look on that team room, narrow the focus. Narrow the focus, right? Again, that's the role of the head coach, and they follow how you handle things as a head coach. Narrow the focus. Narrow the focus. You know, I've used that term, coach your team. That's what I've tried to do. I think that's pretty simple. I really do. I mean, I think everybody knows that, you know, the cynic normally is the loudest. The cynic usually is the one that talks the most. The cynic usually is the one that's most committed to getting their message out there. Well, there's a lot of optimists out there too. Just don't talk as loud. And I think, again, you know, we know who we are. We know what we are. We know what we have to improve on from last year. I think it's pretty easy. I really do. I think it's, and again, I talk a lot of times about your culture of your program just being drip, drip, drip. It's not like you're going to walk in and all of a sudden say something, or we're going to do something different now because of what happened. It's just drip, 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 where you handle all situations, whether it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or 4 hours ago. Jeff, I just think the consistency in which you do things, you know, because you're always preparing for the negatives of how you're going to handle it. But you certainly don't knee-jerk and all of a sudden change your delivery or change how you're doing things, you know.
Bob, can you talk about the decision to tweak the offense? How difficult was that in light of the elimination and rushing in 2016, having to adjust for that for last year, and then what did Coach McGee sell you on his vision of marrying both?
Yeah, I think, you know, during the course of last season, and I'll tell you, we've done some remarkable things on offense around here. We really have. I mean, the reason we were able to flip it around, due in large part to our offense, and that's why I say we're never going to lose that identity. But I just felt like there came a point last year, a couple of things. One, people were making us give the ball on the dive, just making us give the ball on the dive, and we couldn't get the ball out on the perimeter necessarily if we wanted to. In other words, if you take the ends and run them up the field and you have to give the ball, you're going to play that game in the box. The second thing was, I really felt like, there were really three things. The second thing, we had some really, really good skill players on this team. Really good skill players. Kind of a different way they all came here. Some were quarterbacks, we got really good skill players. And I didn't see those players really improve. And I didn't see their attitude improve because they weren't getting the ball and they didn't have a chance to really, you know, I mean, yeah, it's a team game. They blocked, they did those things. But we got this really good group of players out on the perimeter. We really can't get them the ball. And then the third thing, I just felt like it was time. Like I think everybody just needed, without changing the whole thing, we needed a fresh breath of life. And that's why I made the move. And Calvin McGee, you know, Arizona led the Pac-12 last year in total offense and scoring offense. And I've known Rich Rodriguez forever. You know, we played him against him at Notre Dame when he's at West Virginia. I've known him forever. He is the one, there's very few guys in this business that are pioneers and start something. Rich Rodriguez is the one that started the zone read quarterback run game. And he's done it everywhere. And Calvin has been with him everywhere. And another piece of that, Urban Meyer, who you guys know coached with me at Notre Dame, every year since Urban's been a head coach at Bowling Green, Florida, and Ohio State, every offseason they clinic with Rich Rodriguez's staff. Wherever Rich has been, they get together. So I had someone there that every year is clinicking with Calvin McGee and Rich and the whole deal. So there was a lot of reasons I did it. The biggest reason, he likes to run the ball out of a spread offense. You know, it's not out bubble screen you. It's out run the ball out of a spread. And it's easy to marry in our option game with what he does, even though they haven't done a whole lot of that. It's easy. And he was excited by it. You know, he was excited by it. And he had chances to go, you know, I'll let him talk. He was excited about having played against us and knowing us, how he could take his offense and intertwine that with our offense. So I think everybody's excited about it. But it's not, it is tweak. It's not like we just throw away what we've done.
And just talking about the quarterbacks again, is it an advantage in one sense now that if you're going to hit the quarterbacks a little bit in practice, when you had Lamar last year, obviously you knew what he was going to do. Maybe that's a good thing in disguise, getting the quarterbacks that experience of being in live action.
I think we have to. I think we have to. Number one, to figure out who is the guy, right? To really have a competition where we can determine who is the best guy. Now, all of them have to stay healthy for us to do that. You know, if one of them gets hurt, that's out the window. But if everybody stays healthy, I think we have to do that. And such a big part of this is the quarterback running the ball. And you take a kid like Colton Gerhardt, that may be his strength. You go back to the Tulsa game, they had a hard time tackling Colton Gerhardt. You rushed for, what, 200 yards? So, and if we're going to throw it more, I want to see him throw it more with a guy full speed, rushing, and the whole deal. So again, you know, not that we're going to go out there and scrimmage every day, but I think it's part of, you know, part of the plan right now of what we're thinking. I think we have to do it. What do you think, E? You good? All right.
Coach, the football program is one of the most expensive. What's it going to be like to see those other teams have to pack up? Is there any guilt at all?
No, not guilt at all. I feel bad. I feel extremely bad. Nobody knows more than another coach of what coaches invest in their program and how much pride you take in it. Nobody knows more than a player what other players put into it. You leave home, you set out, you have a plan, you have a course, you put everything into it, and it gets taken away. But guilt, absolutely not. Absolutely not. You know, football costs the most, but football also brings in the most. You know, there's one line item that everybody focuses on, and that is ticket revenue generated. There's a whole other lot of line items of revenue coming into this athletic department that football is responsible for. But again, you know, I'm a coach. I came here to coach this team, and that's what I'm going to do. But certainly we all feel bad of what's happened. I do feel a responsibility to win and put our best product on the field. And if that can help by increasing that one line item of ticket sales, absolutely I feel responsible for that. You know, but yeah, I mean, it's a tough situation. I mean, I get it completely.
Hey, Coach, I've been telling everybody on the radio, and maybe I'm right or wrong, this is the best 85-man roster I've seen involved for the last 6 years. Do you think it is the best roster?
Now, when have you seen that 85-man roster? I'm going to see the 85 roster for the first time tomorrow. We got new guys in here that haven't been here yet.
Just for me looking at it.
Now, wait a second. Now, we're going to get to the bottom of this. You're saying this is the best 85-man roster. I haven't even seen the 85-man roster yet altogether.
Let's go back.
Now, you know, if I can't tease you, it's not worth doing. No, Marty, we're talented enough. Okay, we're talented enough. You know, I'm not going to get into that talent trap of saying, yeah, we really are talented, or no, we're not talented. You know, that's kind of a gotcha moment when you do something like that. But we got enough talent. I get your point.
Marty was out there doing time in the 40s and stuff.
Yeah.
You get your thoughts on the new red shirt?
Pardon me?
Your thoughts on the new red shirt?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm a little surprised. You know, it's a pretty strong statement, right? That you can play guys up to 4 games at any time during the season. Pretty dramatic change, but it definitely adds a lot of strategy to it. And I think it's a good thing, you know, particularly in this era of, in some ways, they've probably become a little more liberal on the transfer rules. And we all know that players leave a little bit quicker than they used to leave. In some ways, this redshirt rule allows you to maybe get a freshman or a new guy out there instead of just being on the scout squad all fall and feeling like he's not a part of it. So I think in some ways with the more liberal transfer rules, they make it maybe a little more player-friendly and easier to get him into the feeling that he's really a part of it by letting him have 4 games. So I think it's a great thing. You know, I think it's a great thing. But it does add some strategy.
Are you planning to play freshmen more?
Yeah. I mean, we're going to play anybody that can help us. And, you know, particularly in this conference or at a place like the University of New Mexico with, you know, different depth issues, you know, just like the situation last year, the biggest example would be Bryson Carroll, who was our 4th quarterback. And we had all 3 quarterbacks get hurt against Tulsa, 2 prior to Tulsa. But Colton Gerhardt went down with 2 plays left in the first half. And we didn't know if it was going to be for the game. We put Bryson Carroll in. He ran the ball on 1 play, took a knee on the 2nd play. This was the 4th game of the year, and he lost the season of football just for going in and running 1 play and taking a knee. And we appealed it, but we didn't get it overturned. There's some common sense things there where it really helps players, right? So absolutely, though, you can look for strategy, getting guys in different situations, knowing it's not going to cost them a season. I think it's a great rule.
With the financial situation that UNM is in now, how does that bode for, you know, with keeping up with the Joneses with other schools, you know, because there's a competitive battle, trying to increase facilities, trying to you know, entice those recruits. How does UNM compete but still staying financially sustainable?
Well, I think it's who you're competing against. You know, I saw just came out a week or 2 ago where they finalized what each Big Ten school received from their television contract. Each Big Ten school received $50 million. I think we were $830,000 here last year that we received for our television. So keeping up with the Power 5 thing, that didn't happen. Now, within the Mountain West Conference, that's a challenge. That's a huge challenge, you know, particularly in our division. When you look at Wyoming just opened a $55 million end zone performance facility. And Craig Bowl was talking about the gourmet chef that they were hiring and what a big part nutrition plays, not only in that building, but across the board athletic-wise. I could keep going down the line. Colorado State, a $225 million stadium. We all know what Boise State is. Utah State a couple years ago, it was a $25 million weight room complex. Air Force has redone what they've done. We have to do what we do with what we do. You know, all of a sudden, maybe there seems a bit of a narrative that football does more with, you know, football does less with more, just because of all the budget talking, you know, that the narrative is football does less with more. Football does more with less, if you compare our budget to who we're playing against. And that's the reality of that. But it's a challenge. We all know that.
Bob, outside of Aaron Jenkins, how do you feel about the offensive line?
I'm intrigued. I'm a little nervous, you know, just because a lot of those guys haven't played. We've had a center, Blaze Fountain, that's played the last 2 years for us that was rock solid in there. We're going to have somebody else snapping the football to a guy that hasn't really caught the ball a lot in the game. Teton Saltis is back. He's healthy. We feel good about him. That's still the, you know, I feel better. I think we have a few more numbers than we had a year ago. They've worked extremely hard as a unit in the off season. That's going to be one of the big storylines again as we go into this season. All right, guys. Fred.
I was just going to ask about the running backs. I know you're going to pass a lot more this year, but you took the big loss in running backs. You lost a lot of runners. And I just wonder if you could let us know, what do we have?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, Amari Davis is a junior college back that transferred in here, that was here in the spring. Big Schuler is a running back that's a big guy. We moved him from tight end back to running back in the spring. Bryson Carroll, we moved to running back from quarterback. That we're really excited about Bryson Carroll. He hasn't done it yet, but he's extremely quick, extremely fast. Day Vigilant is a guy that was highly recruited. Has had some injury problems. He's healthy. We're excited about him. Contrell Moran, obviously. Hopefully he can come back off whatever we find out tomorrow with the arthroscopic surgery. And then L.O. Johnson's a young running back from Wisconsin that's been here all summer, that was highly recruited, that we're excited about. And then, of course, Tyrone Owens. So I think it's a lot of hungry guys, a lot of competition. I think kind of like our wide receiver group, where they can jump up and surprise some people, but there's a bit of an unknown there, But I think that's what's so exciting about this team going into it. I really do. You know, as Marty said, we are talented, but nothing's really etched in stone, and it's kind of fun to just put it out there and let's see what happens. Okay, guys, appreciate it. We got Aaron and.
Aaron, so Aaron, the not gonna bring him up front, but Aaron Blackwell's here. Emmanuel Harris, wide receiver, who's back from his injury, is here.